Apologize for being late. We'll call this meeting to order. You've got the minutes from our last meeting before you.
Move their approval.
We got a motion for approval there, a second. And a second. Any corrections or additions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are passed. Open forum.
Ms. Sue Kennedy, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, before she comes up, I'd
Dr. Jones.
like to introduce her. She is a pediatric nurse practitioner. She has worked for 6 years as a school nurse, but what is most important, she brings some good news about the good use of the Maritime Park, because her title is School Wellness Coordinator for Escambia County School Districts, but in 4 weeks, she almost alone organized a worldwide day of play down there, in which 300 school kids were entertained and introduced to wellness and nutrition and everything. And she is, frankly, she's a tornado, so you better be careful. So I asked her to come here and tell us some good news from the Maritime Park.
Do you have anything left to say? Or?
I'm never at loss for words.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, for inviting her. Welcome, Ms. Kennedy.
I work for United Healthcare, and I'm a partnership with the district for wellness. I'm on a childhood obesity initiative called Activate for Kids. And so while I do intervention with some children, we need the prevention, we need the education in the schools. So I am here to thank the neighborhood services for all of their help in helping make this event come about. I was 4 weeks' time, and I would never have been able to do it without the support of the Maritime Park and with the neighborhood services, because they allowed us to come in and present. This is a national event that Nickelodeon does. They turn the TVs off, and so we were promoting it within the other districts that have wellness coordinators with United Healthcare. And I by far had the nicest venue. And when I showed the pictures to everyone at United Healthcare and told them why it was so important that they support me on this and that it was worth my time to do it, they realized when they saw the pictures of everything with the water behind it. So we had everything from yoga to hula hoops to lacrosse, all kinds of things that any child, any age could do. We had Kid Fits did a kid boot camp where these little ones were pulling a tire and they were doing sack races with their parents. And it was really, we probably had close to 900 people there, because I only registered the kids K through 12 because they were registering for an Xbox Connect. And so, and then the school with the most activity with our website and with the Maritime Park, the school got an Xbox Connect as well. So I just want to thank Neighborhood Services and the support of Dr. Jones and everyone in the community, because everybody really pulled together.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy, and thank you for your work. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else? Ed?
No more cards, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll go on discussion items. We're starting with the ADA accessibility at the amphitheater. We talked about that a little bit at our last meeting. Councilwoman Myers had brought that up. Do we have update? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, well, I would like to discuss this issue. I have had a number of people complain to me that they had a difficult time getting to the stadium because of their disability, and these are not people who necessarily use wheelchairs. I've had people complain that they've had to drop their family member off and go find a place to park some distance away. Not everyone is capable of being dropped off and left alone. So these are common complaints that somehow we need to address the issue of parking especially during games when the parking lots are rented. But another complaint I have has to do with the amphitheater. And I had the honor of having supper the other night with Michael Sullivan, who is retired from the San Francisco Police Department. He was hurt in the line of duty. He had been there for 26 years, but for the last 17 years, he was the ADA coordinator for the San Francisco Police Department. He has written the model handbook for ADA and law enforcement in the United States. And so I met with him and his wife after he did a 2-day training for law enforcement here in Escambia and Santa Rosa County. And so we came down here to City Hall. They had never been to Pensacola, and I wanted to show them around. Of course, Dick Barker happened to be here. The building was closed, and he took us up to the 7th floor. And I'm telling you, it was just overwhelming. They were so impressed to see the stadium from the 7th floor. And that was before we even went to the stadium. It's really awesome from that perspective. So we went over there, and we wanted to visit the amphitheater. Now, this is a gentleman who has a fairly significant walking impairment. We were lucky. We found, I would like for you all to look at your EBO presentation, because on the front is a good aerial view of the stadium and the amphitheater. And we were able to find, because it was late at night, a parking space here at this circle here, a little cul-de-sac. And so it was quite difficult for him, but he was determined he wanted to see the amphitheater. Of course, they were highly impressed with it. Who wouldn't be? Now, the issue is, as I discussed with him, we went to eat afterwards, is that the ADA requires that every element of a park or venue be accessible to people with disabilities. And this amphitheater is not, because one reason, there's no parking. We have parking spaces here at this circle. I walked along the east side of the amphitheater all the way back to the front of the stadium. We do have parking along there to some extent, but no handicap parking. This amphitheater is a separate element from the stadium. And it is an independent element of the park, and it has to have handicap parking there. And I believe that this is a violation of the ADA. We're a Title II entity, and we have a higher standard than a private business. And so I think that, you know, the original design of that circle there, it came down closer to the water, but the original design of it was to allow handicap parking and access for people with disabilities. It had, Mr. Sullivan had to walk from the parking lot in front of the stadium because there was no parking here. He could not have had access to the amphitheater. The only way he was able to have access to that amphitheater is we just got lucky. We went late at night. There was nothing going on, and there were parking places there. So I'm bringing this to your attention because I think that it needs to be addressed. How are we going to make it accessible, the amphitheater? Now, getting the stadium accessible is a different issue. That's more problematic. But I don't think it's problematic for the amphitheater because we can put handicap parking down there. And remember that handicap parking has to be located at the closest accessible entrance. So the closest accessible entrance to that amphitheater is that circle there, and that drive, that parking on the other side of the stadium on the west side. So I think that's what's required. So I don't know where we go from here, but I'm just bringing it to your attention. You know, we're just getting too many complaints from people about this. So I don't think it's something we can ignore.
When you said, Councilwoman Myers, the circle, if that was handicap parking, would that qualify?
Yes, I think we need handicap parking there.
And that would take care of the amphitheater?
That would take care of it, because that is
If indeed we were out of compliance, I'm not
the
saying we are or
closest
not.
accessible entrance. Well, one thing we could do is get an opinion from the U.S. Justice Department. I mean, this board could write a letter to the U.S. Justice Department and get an opinion. They give technical opinions there on the ADA.
Might be asking for trouble.
Well, there's another thing
I
that,
have a problem. I ask the IRS for help.
well,
But also might be preventing liability also.
Well, you know, during game days, Ed, correct me, or Kim, didn't we start trying to do handicap in here?
Yeah, no, we didn't do handicap in there. We actually did handicap. We did it between the stadium, in front of the stadium, all the way down that middle road.
And we left this for open parking?
We did.
Oh, we had that
did
blocked
park
off.
over
We
here.
had that blocked off. But at one time, we talked about making that.
We did, Mr. Chairman, and there is existing currently, one on each side of the street, handicap spaces on the access road going south. There is not one currently in the cul-de-sac, that is correct, but those spots are loosely delineated. They're not very hard and fast lines in that circle. There's a circle dividing the travel lane from the parking, but there are not official bays designated there. There is the sidewalk access and another curb cut. So there would be a lot more marking and striping to take place. Also in this picture, you see vehicles down the east side. This was during construction. That is not a vehicular access. That is for emergency vehicles and servicing the amphitheater. So there are no vehicles from the public allowed on these.
right, but there is, from about this point on, right here, is parking down here on this side. So the only access to the amphitheater is along here, you know, park here, walk here, or park down here. And we're talking about handicap parking spaces, okay? And so those are very, very long distances. And I don't think, you know, what are special events doing for handicap parking other than using the parking down here in front of the stadium?
I think, Kim, they said they were using some of that lane there, but not the circle. Is that correct?
We use some of the circle if that area is not being blocked off. Like if we have an event that is going on and they're using beside the stadium all the way around, then it is blocked off. But normally we don't use, because a lot of times it's already, people have already parked in there. We don't use that for handicap parking. We just use in the parking lot, and then of course that middle road for handicap parking.
Yeah. And our, you know, as y'all know, our front row, ours being our parking lot, that you can barely see the edge of, are all handicap spots, and all of them we sell, as Councilwoman Myers said, and that's
There's
something
22 of them.
that the Audit and Operations Committee made me do. For the money, and each one of them was bringing in $700. So if we didn't sell them, and by law we can do that, you can sell that. You know, I don't know if you keep a few of them open or not, but if a handicapped person were to come in there, they're paying $10, I think. Is that correct? If they didn't have a permit, if they didn't buy one of the spots.
If they didn't buy a spot, what we've done is individuals that have lifts on their vehicles, you cannot charge for handicap parking. You can't charge at all. So if they have a lift on their vehicle, then they have free access wherever we're parking.
But not those spots.
Correct.
Because those spots are already bought. So they're somewhere in the lot, you got to let them in.
Yes.
Dr. Jones.
But if it's a
we-
non-modified vehicle, if it doesn't have a lift.
Correct.
We can charge.
Yes.
You just have a handicap
Yes.
parking and the spaces available. Dr. Jones.
Do we know how many parking spots are necessary? Doesn't it vary by venue. For example, as amphitheater expecting 7,000 people, does the number of handicap parking spots vary with the number?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that when I was doing some research on it, that we exceed, for our parking lot, we exceed the handicap spots required by the state.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman,
Mr. Murray.
on the east side, Ed, how far is parking actually permitted now?
If you look at the curve where Spring Street curves and becomes Cedar Street and goes to the east, there is parking just to the north on the east side of Spring Street and just to the west on the south side of Cedar. So directly in front of the stadium and on the water side of Spring Street. You can,
But if you can draw me a line, if you would, so. Okay, so no part of that east bulkhead is accessible.
there is an access ramp for maintenance vehicles and vehicles that are servicing the amphitheater to go down, and then there's a series of 4 bollards, approximately in line with the stadium northeast corner.
'Cause I don't know, I drove down there one time right up next to the amphitheater, and there were cars down there with people fishing and whatnot.
And
Is there,
we're doing our best to notify those individuals that they're not supposed to be down there, but we have experienced that. Oftentimes the bollards are off because we're servicing the park and service vehicles, law enforcement. The design is where they can drive the perimeter. Law enforcement doesn't have to get out. He can actually take his patrol car all the way around and then drive out to Village Plaza. So oftentimes one or more of the bollards are not in place.
well, is there any reason we couldn't, particularly for events, designate either on a temporary or permanent basis some of those along that bulkhead for handicap or closer to the amphitheater?
There really aren't parking spaces delineated in that area.
Well, I mean,
Of course
if it's
we
a matter of
could.
putting-
We could.
Putting some paint stripes there.
Isn't that the
would-
fire access road as well?
It is,
Blocked
and
it.
there would be a very tight fit if an 18-wheeler was bringing equipment to the amphitheater and there were vehicles.
Well, I understand, but that doesn't happen very often.
That's
And if
correct.
it's, you know, you could block it off for, you know, access. If they've got there, you'd have, you know, security people, whatever. But it just seems to me that for the rare occasions when you would need that, and that's got to be wide enough for a fire truck, even if there's a car parked there, is it not?
It's fairly wide. Dave, what's that dimension? 20, it's 20 feet wide. Standard road is 24 feet wide, 12-foot travel lanes.
I mean, it's designed for the trucks for the service and the
Correct.
acts to be able to drive down there.
That's correct.
Right.
And turn
But as I say,
around.
that doesn't
And we're
happen.
currently experiencing vehicles driving through the landscaping beds to drive down there to fish late at night. And so we're having to deal with that issue. When the bollards are up, they're going around them into the planter beds. So, you know, that's a policy and maintenance and operation issue that I think is at the board's discretion.
Mr. McCormick, did you have something else?
Well, yeah, it just seems to me the issue that I'm getting from Ms. Myers is we're really not talking about handicap in the ballpark. That could be a separate issue, and if we exceed what the state says, that's one issue. They can park pretty close. Her deal is if we have a separate event at the amphitheater, it's really hard for the handicap people to use the ballpark handicap. So the logical thing to me, like she suggested, is we pick a couple of spots out in the circle or whatever the number is and just paint them and make them handicap.
And that's what I was going to see, if we could take a look at that and get them in there where it doesn't impede. If you had an emergency vehicle come in there, that seems like a logical solution. And Councilwoman Myers seems to think that would come into compliance.
Well, we definitely need handicap parking at the closest accessible entrance to the amphitheater, or at least to the Great Lawn where the events take place is what we're talking about. Because really, I mean, if somebody's using the amphitheater, they're going to have access to the amphitheater, because if they're a musician or there's somebody who's on stage, what we're really talking about is to the Great Lawn, you know, to the events that happen there.
Well, if we could designate some handicap spots in that circle and then even coming back up the road.
There are 2 there currently.
Yeah, and how
But Ed, did you say they weren't striped though, right?
These are marked with
two
the
of
two coming in the neck.
Okay, but do they meet the design standards of the Florida Building Code and
Yes,
Florida
ma'am.
statute? They have signage there?
Is there signage or is it painted?
Neither, but it's built for that.
It's built for that?
Okay,
you're
but,
saying it doesn't have the handicap parking only?
right, it has
enforceable.
to be striped, it has to have signage, and it has to have the fine. You know, it has to have the statutorily required signage to be an enforceable handicap parking space. So just, and they have to be located there at that curb cut. There's a curb cut there.
They are, Mr. Hanfield, they are located at the curb cut. I think I can speak for the board. Ed, will you go ahead and make sure those are posted correctly
Get the
and
signage
painted
and the
and the
paint.
signage in there? And then the board's wishes, I'm going to tell them to go ahead and look in if we can add some more without impeding emergency vehicles.
And, Mr. Chairman, any place where it's constructed to the appropriate standard, we'll have them marked and signed by next week.
Okay, thank you.
How can you have a yogurt shop without having handicap parking? You can have a 2-story sign, but
The shared parking with our main parking lot.
so on that circle, there's no handicap parking near the yogurt shop?
There's two up here on this road. It's frozen yogurt. For the record.
And they deliver to your car.
Anything? True. They will?
No.
No, he's,
Wait a second. Anything else on that issue? We'll see that is. I appreciate Ed jumping on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Murdy.
if people are driving around the bollards and the only reason that the bollards are up really is to preserve access for the trucks, which we are not going to have, but on rare occasions, it seems to me they're handicapped people that fish. You know, I mean, if they're driving around the bollards, the way to resolve that is take the bollards out, except, you know, on those special occasions, and put a couple of handicap spaces down there. You know, and I mean, I think if it's a public park, that part ought to be accessible too. And if it's creating damage, you know, the solution is put a couple of handicaps, allow people down there. I mean, I'll make that in the form of a motion if necessary.
Any other comments? Is there a reason we'd want to keep that blocked off? I've driven down there myself.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, the east side is a different discussion from the south and the west. The south and the west where the brick pavers and the promenade, that's a pedestrian area.
Right.
And I've personally witnessed vehicles not knowing any better,
driving all the way
driving
down.
all the way around.
Well, but you could stop that a lot easier, I think, when you had people, you know.
Mr. Murdy, you're saying just that they can drive
Right,
just
down
down
to
the
that point.
amphitheater and back.
Yeah. And maybe not even behind the amphitheater, but just to the, you know, the east side, but don't let them get on the south side.
They're already going around a bollard on the north side. They would go
Well,
around
but
the
if,
bollard on the south side.
but if you could get, you know, it'd be a lot less, you know, they could get access to that amount.
Colonel?
I was saying that that area is, I just look at it as being an area that shouldn't be used. And if we start opening it up, even for anybody, it's going to cause problems eventually. You're going to have people who fish so much, they're going to be camping out down there the way they do on the Bay Bridge. I just think if it was made to be a limited use type area, we should leave it as that unless there's some reason. And with us being able to sell the handicap area on the west side, I think that's enough. I just don't see changing everything based on a request that's been solved. I just don't think it's worth all the...
And on that side, I tend to agree. Maybe we need to increase our, if we're trying to keep people from driving there, find a way to increase it where they can't drive around it. Will you look at that when you're doing that? Unless you want to make a motion to drive down.
I'm going to make a motion to allow access down there and designate 2 handicap spaces down there. And if it's, you know, it would allow people, it's the People's Park, you know, they can't drive down to any of the west or south sides. That's the only side that they can access. And it's a waterfront park if you can't allow waterfront access. You damn sure can't get there by boat.
That's sad.
You can,
Eventually.
Once,
but you gotta wade in.
Was that a motion?
yes.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion, a second on the floor. Discussion, Mr. McCormick.
Is that area now, is it paved? Or is it just
It's
grass?
paved for truck
Reinforced
traffic.
concrete.
It's what?
It's reinforced concrete. It's got steel.
So it is,
Our engineer's right there.
it is kind of sort of paved then. It's old concrete road.
It's a concrete road.
It could take an 18.
It's got to take 8 years.
Dave, then Phil.
Okay.
Couple things keeping in mind. On the east side, the amphitheater has a loading dock. That loading dock has a fairly steep slope, would not meet handicap parking requirements. Those parking spaces need to be less than 2% in any direction. That would not qualify. There may be some flat area that does, but it's fairly small. And the cul-de-sac, the reason it's striped the way it is to allow heavy truck traffic. If you put handicap parking on the cul-de-sac, you will not be able to make the turn with a heavy truck. So those were the two considerations in the design.
All right, just on the back to the cul-de-sac then, I know we could add some more up on that road then. We look at maybe
Yeah, that was
more
the
spots and
solution.
designate them properly.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Pratt.
Thank you. At this point, I will not support the motion. I think that if there are fishermen who need to get right up there, we do have Palafox Pier. I see them out there all the time. The intent of that side, if you recall the original drawings, it was a promenade. It was a wide place to stroll and walk. If we then turn that into a road, where's the sidewalk? Where's the pedestrian access? I think we need to preserve the pedestrian access aspect of that side. If we need to address putting more handicap parking at the circle, then we'll need to do that. But I think that it was designed as a pedestrian access, not as vehicular access. Thank you.
Dr. Jones.
I agree that if you allow unlimited access, you're going to have some people parking out overnight like they do on the fishing pier, and then how are you going to remove them when the 16, 18-wheeler has to get down there? I would keep it private. Open to the public, strolling only.
And Mr. Chairman, just to give some background information, I know Kim can speak to this as well as Al Garza and our maintenance staff. We've become a very popular fishing spot. There are people there just about 24 hours a day fishing. I'm there at various times on most days, and there's always someone there fishing. And our maintenance crews are reporting human urine, human feces, that they're having to clean up just about daily especially in the amphitheater area, because you can get some semblance of privacy in a couple of the little corners and alcoves of the amphitheater itself. So we are a very, very popular spot.
Councilwoman Myers.
Yes. I don't have a problem with this being strictly pedestrian. What I do have a problem with is there not being sufficient handicap parking along here, where there's already parking. Because if you say that this walkway is the entrance to this amphitheater, which it is, then you would have to have parking down here. Hopefully, when Mr. Studer gets his building built, he's going to put more handicap parking here that will allow people to get on, to get on this road, walk on here, stroll on it if they can. Roll in a motorized wheelchair. Then, but this is a major entrance to this amphitheater, and so is this sidewalk here. So if we can't put handicap parking here, I don't know why they put a curb cut there if they don't want handicap parking there, because it would interfere with the trucks. Because if you put your handicap parking back here, which you could do, you could still put in a curb cut here, just below the circle, and there shouldn't be a problem with trucks at that location, right? Correct. But that would still give us handicap parking. It just wouldn't be on the circle, but we would have to put in a curb cut.
I'm gonna ask Ed, besides going ahead and identify the ones that are already in, that will sign those within a week, to come back to us with other places, including, with the site map, including the area you identified, Councilwoman Myers, up here at the end of the east side ramp, where we can put in additional handicap spaces, and then we'll look at them and come up with a better plan, because I see no reason to put them up here, like you said, where people can then come down this promenade. But we do have a motion.
I'm going to withdraw my second, because I don't think it would be
a motion.
fair.
Do I hear a second? Hearing none, motion fails. Any other issue on ADA? If not, under discussion items, second, we have visionary rights production.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Dottie Dubison.
Yes, sir. I came over here to speak when you made the comments regarding the human feces situation, and I would like for this board to consider the fact that we have created a public facility which draws people all hours of the day, and there are no restrooms available if the amphitheater or the stadium restrooms are not open. For a while, the amphitheater restrooms were opened, and then they were left in very poor condition, so I believe at that point they were locked. I believe this is a growing problem in the city of Pensacola. I personally have had to worry about having hygienic situations changed in several areas around downtown, because there are people who do not have the means to go into the very large restaurants that do offer public restrooms. We have to address what people do when they're in our city, whether they are a 2-year-old toddler or an 80-year-old individual in a wheelchair coming to visit our community. We must allow basic facilities to be available to these tourists. We are building a tourism industry, and there are certain requirements that go with it. So please look at how we might get some sort of restroom situation down there, because as it grows in popularity, that's just going to be a growing issue. Thank you.
Dr. Jones.
The problem is, as you're well aware, that during the nighttime hours, those restrooms are misused, shall we say, and sometimes that we have, I think Ms. Cameron can speak to that, about opening up during the daylight hours only, or in the evening when there's a function.
I missed part of that. You said Ed was running his mouth in my ear, and I'm very,
at nighttime, the restrooms there are misused.
Right.
I think you had a sleeping person in it.
Yeah.
The pillow was his toilet. So
right now, we actually do have a staff person on site during the day that opens the restrooms in the mornings and when he leaves. And on the weekends, we have an individual that takes care of Plaza de Luna and the Maritime Park with those restrooms. So they are opened at this point in time.
During the day?
During the day. At night, if there's not an event, we do lock them up, because we have had people that are sleeping in them and leaving pillows and clothes and all sorts of things.
Well, and there's been
restrooms at the stadium, not at the amphitheater.
Not at the amphitheater. Those are locked down just at the stadium, outside the stadium.
There's a great deal of equipment stored in the facility.
Those are the ones, as you know, behind the south of the amphitheater. Stadium. It's an age-old problem, as Dottie pointed out. I've been downtown, working down here for the last 20 years, something I've brought up in the past. When Plaza de Luna was open, and I was the only one living down there at the time, I lived down there for a number of years. I mean, my building was the place to go to the bathroom and the dumpster. I mean, there was, and then they built the restaurant, and they said, okay, when the restaurant's open, the bathrooms will be open, and why don't you leave them open all night? As Dr. Jones said, all kinds of activities happen in there, and it becomes an attraction of an activity you don't want going on down there, between drugs and other things that happen. But I agree. I wish there was a solution to that. I don't know what it is. I don't know. On the portalet. I know when there were runs downtown, occasionally they leave the portalets out for a while, and the fish, because I see all the people come to Plaza Luna, it's very popular, but you're right, and they're drinking and having a good time, and they're going to the bathroom somewhere all the time. Ms. Carter?
I agree with Ms. Myers, and one of my concerns is that when we talked about the park and security in the day-to-day operation, security was an issue. When do we have security down there? Is it just only part-time? I guess What's the situation without security? Are we just paying for part-time security when?
I hope we're not paying for any security. And that was part of our budget talks, that, the police patrol Plaza de Luna. And, we wanted to get on that patrol route. They said since we're not really part of the city, that they weren't sure, maybe they charge us, and we've deleted that budget item, 60 grand, several times. And so hopefully we're not doing it now, and we're just on a patrol route. I think I was not aware what our activities were with the bathroom, so I'm glad to hear that.
It's a maintenance worker that's down there.
Yeah, that it is open during the day. I think as far as bathrooms in the city, like I said, I think it's a problem, and I'm glad there's 3 council people here that can address that at their council meetings, because I don't think that's our issue here as far as that. But
Okay, and then I have one thing to add to that. We do know that it's only going to get busier. And remember, this is the area where a lot of people lived before we moved them away. So, in their heads, in their mind, in their paradigm, it's still their home, even though we have this park that took the space. And I'm just asking the board to consider what other people are doing in other places when they're having this challenge, because it's only going to get worse. And 2, maybe we all might get together with the city and say there might need to be 2 portlets put somewhere over on for a while until we phase this thing out. But we're going to have the feces problem. We're going to have the vagrant problem. It's real, because this was their home before we moved this park there. And I just want to kind of raise the level of awareness and have us talk about that as some solutions, or short-term solutions.
all right. Anything else on that? Councilwoman Myers.
I just wanted to state my awareness when I was down there. It was on a Tuesday night with Mr. Sullivan and his wife. It was about maybe 7:30 or 8 o'clock. There were very few people down there fishing. Then we went over to Plaza de Luna, and it was packed out. And I think the reason is because people don't want to walk that far from their vehicles with their fishing tackle and all of that. But I did not feel that, I would not have felt safe being down there. I saw one woman by herself walking a dog. He looked like he could have been a little ferocious, so she probably wouldn't have been a good target. But I didn't feel particularly safe back there behind the amphitheater in that area, walking at night. So I think I don't know how much security we have back there, but I can see where it's dark back there and kind of isolated. And I think that might be a problem that maybe the city needs to look at, or whoever.
I think, people certainly need to be aware of using that, like any other area that could be somewhat dangerous and dark if you're alone. I agree with that. The Plaza de Luna thing is, there's a big parking lot right behind the circle there that some of them park in, but I kind of agitates me sometimes when all the fishermen do, and I like to fish, do take all those spaces up, because they'll come in and they stay, for hours and hours, and then other people want to drive in and just enjoy the park, and so, they go to the back. There's always plenty of parking, but they do fish and they have a good time. Right now, the Kings are running it back up in here, and they catch huge ones off the Plaza de Luna right now. Anything else on that subject? We'll continue to monitor that, and after the council comes up with a good solution, we'll follow them. Next up, Vision Right Productions.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request that has been forwarded to the board from the City Council, so I'll definitely defer to our 3 council members. I believe they've had some presentations and discussion at recent council meetings on this issue, and I've also asked Neighborhood Services to discuss about the opportunities that are provided to Visionary Right, as well as anyone who would like to do promotions and events at the amphitheater. So I'll definitely defer to the council members present.
I get to be it. Great. Thank you. I'll just give you a little bit of the discussion. Mrs. Johnson came to the council a while back and said, she's trying to figure out. She was upset by how visionary rights was treated in this process, and what basically came out of the discussion was a feeling that the city was saying, well, it's not our responsibility, and the CMPA was saying, well, it's not our responsibility, and so there was a request that it be on the CMPA agenda to figure out an appropriate response to visionary rights, and from the CMPA, and a discussion of what that response would be, and make sure that we treat visionary rights with the respect they deserve. That's a quick summary of it, and other council members are welcome to weigh in. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson, Councilman Myers, anything else to add to that?
Well, the reason we sent it back to the CMPA is because that's where the issue originated. And we felt that the CMPA would have more background knowledge of this issue and should be the avenue for addressing this issue.
What is the issue?
That is you have a letter before you that the council received, and I guess the board as well. And the question really is, as I understand it, the CMPA in our selection of the city, there was this additional encouragement to do business with visionary rights, and the visionary rights group is saying that so this is where it gets really confusing. Who is the city? Who is the CMPA? But is saying that our contractor, the city, did not put a good faith effort into including them. That's sort of how I interpret what was going on, and so they want to make sure that we are aware that our wishes were not followed through or something along those lines.
It seemed like, excuse me.
Go ahead.
It seemed like to me that the issue, number one, they did not, were not chosen to be the management contractor. Number two, they have been sort of treated poorly in terms of communication more than the lack of, beside the fact of not being selected. And Mr. Flaherty, as is noted in their letter, has told Visionary Rights that he was not going to subcontract it. And I further believe that they have been offered, there's an opportunity for them to propose anything which they wish in terms of putting on something at the park, and they will be treated just like anybody else that wants to be put on, to put something on in the park. And I think that it's neither the city nor the CMPA's responsibility. I think that we know that they have not been communicated with properly, but I think that we just should accept this as information only.
Chairman.
Mr. Burning.
What was the mayor or the mayor's office response to the fact that they were blown off, basically?
All right. So when this motion was made at council, it got put on me to make sure that it came to the CMPA, and as the sort of structure we have right now, my first approach was to Mr. Reynolds, and I said, tell me how I should proceed with this. I'd like to get a little of the background before this all goes. I knew I could just, as a CMPA member, call Mr. Spears and ask for it, but I wanted to find out, and his response was, it's not the city's responsibility, speak to Mr. Spears. And so that was the response I have from the administration on that in my council member role. Mr. Spears said that he would have the city as our contractee here today to address any concerns about how this was handled. But basically, my understanding was that from the administration's view, this is a CMPA issue.
Except that the people, you know, the mayor asked for all this information and ignored the responses. So, you know, I think the communication problem is entirely with the city, and I think they ought to deal with it. I remember very distinctly that it was the vote of this board because of the incredible talents of this person and her company and the experience and the strong recommendations that they had, that she be considered in some fashion by the city as a subcontractor or consultant to involve her or her company in some fashion. And apparently Mr. Flaherty, who left shortly thereafter, said it ain't going to happen. And, you know, I think when this board takes action and our contractor blows it off, I think that's you know, I think that's entirely improper. Now, he's gone. I think we need to try and resurrect this situation. I'd be willing to, you know, seems to me it falls under operations. I'd be willing to try and talk to the lady, and, you know, if the mayor's not big enough to apologize, I'll apologize for him and say, let's see if we can't find a way, because I think in order to get national acts in here, we need to have a national promoter. And, you know, I think sit down and try and say, what can you bring to the table, and let's see if we can work together in some fashion. You know, with the idea being they're not, you know, they didn't get the contract, but they can certainly, just like anybody else, and maybe they could work themselves in, because I've heard rumors, and I'd like it to be put to rest one way or the other, that the city's really not interested in being a promoter. You know, and they were just doing this as a stopgap. You know?
And Mr. Reeves.
I move that we take this letter, this letter, and the financial policies and procedures that is in the handout, and we refer them to the Operations and Audit Committee for action and recommendation to this board.
Got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Dr. Jones, you had your hand up.
I think we should remove both the CMPA and the City Council from this discussion. I think that it's been the complaint, as far as I can see it, is lack of communication. I think the decision has already been made to contract with our management company, and this is between the management company and Visionary Rights. It's not between CMPA or the City Council, and neither body should try to direct or influence or twist the arm of our contractor to do anything that the contractor does not want to do or sees feasible.
And I'll give my comments quickly, in that I mentioned this letter, and that did, I was contacted by Ms. Johnson after this, and Mr. Birding's right. While we did not award that company the contract, we said we hope that they can work together. But I was contacted about Mr. Flaherty's comments, which concerned me, as they concern everybody here, I'm sure, that, you know, regardless of where we are, we're polite, and if there's somebody can help us, we want them to help us. And I set up the call with Mr. Asmar, and then who is Mr. Flaherty's direct report, and you know, I was out of it, other than I've heard from a second source that nothing was moving along, and then I talked to Kim, I think it was after Flaherty had left, about, you know, what, if anything was coming along there, and they said, you know, we've got a lot of people talking to us. At some point in that conversation, I was asking Ms. Johnson if they were looking to get paid, they want to be a consultant, or whether they're trying to book bands, and I'm not sure where that came out, because we certainly encourage people to come in and, you know, and book bands and do that. I don't think we were looking for another paid consultant at that point, but that's my experience with it. Ms. Carter had her hand up first, and I'll come back to Mr. McCormick.
Oh, yeah, I think we're challenged here, because I remember that day it was a strong, the problem is this is before we actually gave the contract to the city, and that's how we kind of get involved with it, because we still have the obligation as the board to represent the whole community, and it's inclusive. That's how we got involved. And we have been trying to find a way. I think our chair has really tried to moderate this whole thing and figure out a way how to include Right Productions, because she has a lot of experience and she can bring a lot to the table. And we just haven't been able to do that. I mean, we didn't get down to, okay, we're going to make this happen. So I think it's worth an old college try. I think Mr. Maritime is right. We're looking for dollars to create dollars for us to be able to have operating capital. If someone can bring to the table or creative ideas, she has a lot more experience in doing this than we have, then why not? I mean, we can't lose. And then the other caveat is it's diversity. She has the experience and background. I believe she has the contacts with acts to bring here. So it's not a bad thing. So I do support this motion, and I ask that we look perhaps openly to allowing the Operations and Audit Committee to kind of sit down and figure out how to work it out. Because if you really want to work it out, you really will. And I think that this is a good opportunity for that to do so.
Mr. McCormick, then Ms. Scott.
I kind of agree with Ms. Carter there. I don't know whether it hurts to have somebody on our side that's got the expertise to do the things that we want to do, because I recall the discussion, I took it the city as kind of being a stopgap for the first several years until we hired a major company. But if the city's not out trying to sell it to national acts or whatever, and this lady has those connections, I mean, I don't know what it hurts that we try to make a deal with her and get her involved in some manner.
Ms. Scott, and then Councilwoman Myers.
I do recall the meeting where we encouraged the city to utilize the services of the Right Production, and also recall the discussion that we had and the justification that we had for selecting the city to administer this particular service. I remember the pros and I remember the cons. And one of the cons was that they didn't necessarily have that experience in terms of bringing in national acts. But I also remember the pros and cons of why we did not select the Visionary Right Productions to be the main group to provide that service, because they didn't have that local presence, that interest, all of those things that we talked about. But I think we all saw the benefit of bringing them onto the team and utilizing that experience in terms of bringing in some national acts and just the experience with overall event planning. I would absolutely support this motion. I'm personally offended by what I see in this letter, if it's indeed the account of what happened, because of course I don't have the benefit of the other side. But I do recall that we were to enter, that the city was to enter into a conversation with Right Productions to explore the possibilities of them being part of the team. And if that did not occur, shame on us. And this board has interjected itself into other situations with other entities to help bring about resolutions, even though we were not legally or directly responsible for doing that. And I think it's dependent on it's incumbent upon our reputation to continue to do the right thing, and in this case, it is to engage Right Productions in that conversation.
Well, and I was careful when I did contact John Asmar, as you know, as the Chief of Staff, who is Flaherty's boss, but because it is a separate contract, as Dr. Jones says. But when that was brought to my attention, I thought it was worth exploring, and obviously it didn't go the direction it should have. I'm going to ask Kim real quick, and I know somebody else had their hand up. I know this past weekend you had the Latino Festival. How did that work? Yeah, that wasn't your production. That's a promoter came to you.
That's a promoter that came in, and they actually put the event on themselves. Same thing with Soul Bowl this weekend, and then the Battle of the Bands the following weekend. Those are all private promoters that are coming in, or event planners that are paying us to provide those services.
Is that as similar to what Visionary Productions is trying to do?
From what I understand, and maybe I'm late to the conversation, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, is we were approached, David was approached that they wanted to be subcontracted. And at this point in time, there's not a budget to subcontract. And if we do subcontract, then it has to go out as an RFP. We have to give equal opportunity to all promoters to bid for that process.
Mr. Reeves.
Let me just ask a question. that Mr. Flattery, or whatever he was, that was
Flaherty.
the head of the department, is he any longer with?
He is no longer with the city.
So
No, but we have his
the
representative.
proposal that was made, we still don't have the same personnel.
That is correct.
Kinda
We
like
now have a new director.
Scott Davidson thing.
That's, ooh, okay.
Ms. Carter.
I just need a point of clarification. The acts that are here, those are local acts, right, Kim?
The Latino Fest, no, those were not local acts. Those were actually national acts. She brought in one from New York, and then there was a gentleman that came in, I can't pronounce his name, but he was the Dancing with the Stars Latino version of it, the main star with that.
How did that go over this past weekend?
It went over really well. We had about 2,500 people. It was a gated event. I had a great time. I was there Saturday and Sunday.
One other question before you do that.
Ms. Carter.
So we're clear, what's the difference between what Visionary Production thinks what they're bringing, because I'm not clear what they're bringing, and what actually happened. Can we just find out what is it that differentiates her from that? Because I think that needs clarification. Is that okay?
I've got some questions up. Do y'all want me to get to y'all, or you want to hear from
No, go ahead.
Visionary Productions?
I'd rather hear from them. Well,
Mr. Chairman, the whole idea about having a subcommittee is to go through this detail and present. What I want to see is one time for this full board to have a 1-hour meeting, you know, and not to get into the minutia of the festivals and stuff like that. I mean, we've got a management company. So the whole idea is this chairman over here is willing to listen, and he will listen to all of this and render justice and present a recommendation to this board. And that's just what I suggest, rather than we just get tied up in this, all of this detail, that we need to get to the bottom of it, and we'll take the time to do that, won't we, Mr. Chairman?
As much as I like minutia, I wonder if, and Ms. Johnson, I see you have a different name on this.
It's not Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson is the one who's a citizen.
What is that?
Eleanor
Ms.
Johnson.
Johnson is a citizen who's been asking these questions. This
At one time, was your last name Johnson as well?
My married name is Johnson, my professional name is Maritime.
Okay, because I remember calling you Ms. Johnson last time you were here. But I also know who you're talking about. Before we do on the motion, though, I feel like if you want to talk, you're welcome to speak.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the time that you've put into this today. I have not asked for anything from the city or from this board that is not represented in the letter that you have. I did not ask to be contracted. I did not ask to present things on the stage. I have actually had no conversations with the representatives of the city or this board that is not represented in that document. And that's really all I wanted to say. If anyone has any questions of me, I'd be more than pleased to provide it. It's been a great year for my company. We've done well, and I hope it's been a great year for Maritime Park as well.
Help me with your last name, your professional last name.
Mausi.
Mausi?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you being here to clarify what Kim, and I saw you shaking your head at one point when Audra was talking as well. You were looking like this past weekend, the Latino Festival. You want to do productions like that, or are you looking for a subcontract?
At this point, I am not interested in investing money into Maritime Park. I'll put it that way. I am certainly interested and stood ready, as I indicated in the letter, to have conversations with the appropriate entities representing Maritime Park to see if I might be of service in some way to this community and to that venue. That's the extent of the requirements that I have put forward. I have not, now am I interested in, I've got a venue, a 6,000 seat venue in Detroit, and I've got a venue in North Carolina, and we're negotiating with venues overseas now. And so I don't rent venues very often, but if I have services that can be of help, they're still available. And I would just parenthetically, to completely off the subject, and it is minutia, put some benches along those walkways. That would really help some of those seniors and whatnot. It's what we did.
Put some benches?
Benches. So
Dr. Jones? No, Councilwoman Myers?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have been going through your letter, and I have some questions I'd just like to ask you real quick.
Sure.
As I read the letter, I think the most important page is the last page, because she lays out a lot of facts about how she came to apply for a position with the taking on the responsibility of bringing acts and venues here. But she says here, all of she lays all of it out, and she says all of this in the face of the fact that we have not been offered any role with regard to Maritime Park, nor have we had any substantive discussions about what services, if any, we might be engaged to provide. In fact, we have never received any written communication from the City of Pensacola or the CMPA Board in response to our proposal at all. Then in the last paragraph, she says, only because of the initial welcome I received from the mayor, members of City Council, and the chair of the CMPA, have I continued to entertain the possibility of working to help create a great new venue worthy of national and international recognition. Then she asked the question, if that is the goal, and we can be helpful and work in a respectful, professional environment, we still stand ready to participate. And that's your position today, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that nothing has changed since August the 6th when this letter was written. And so basically that one sentence just basically summarizes your position. If this is the goal, and we need to decide if it is the goal. I remember being at the meeting when the city made a bid for that contract, and I came away with the impression that the board had a sense of comfort believing, as the city had led you to believe, that there would be a strong possibility that Right Production would have some role. So, Mr. Reeves, you just mentioned MPDP, kind of misrepresentation to get a contract, and that kind of concerns me here. Was the CMPA, was there some misrepresentation to cause the CMPA to go with the city rather than Right Production, given the comfort level you were, at least I was sitting in the audience, I had, that there would be some participation by Right Productions. I do support Mr. Reeves' motion. I think that this issue deserves a lot more attention than we can give it here, and that we're not prepared to give it today, but I do think it's an appropriate agenda item for the Operation and Audit Committee, so I support the motion.
Got a motion, second. Any further discussion? Dottie, do you want to address this motion? Yes, ma'am.
Before you vote to table this, since it wouldn't be appropriate to speak on this afterwards, I believe, I would like to thank Ms. Moise for flying in from Detroit today specifically to meet with you folks in person. I know that you sent a request to the city to address this weeks ago, and that when it came up at City Council, it was supposed to come back to CMPA at the last meeting. I believe Ms. Pratt was not here, so it was put off for a bit. But quite a few citizens have been monitoring this because many of us looked forward to the level of quality performances, which we believe the CMP can present to this community. And while our staff at the City Hall is trying to do their best to expand the opportunities for its citizens, it's certainly not their area of expertise, and I believe it has been a little bit overwhelming in moments for some of them because of the learning curve, as well as the load which they have had to carry. So I want to thank the staff for having done what they could to move this forward, but I would really like to encourage the Operations and Audit Committee to look at what caliber year-round calendar can we really sustain. When I was writing your grant for BP, it was Ms. Mauiz who I called and said, we need something very quickly. What can you send me? And she sent me exactly the information we needed, a template of what it would take to turn a profitable operation over there for the concerts for that one component there. And she based it on a 60% average based on her experience. Those kinds of things we don't know. We are green in this community in terms of what will an amphitheater of that size do. And so I would really encourage you, number one, to publicly thank Ms. Mauiz for the support that she has continued to offer this community. I would also like to apologize to her as a citizen of Pensacola, because I know that her privacy was invaded by members of the city staff post the decision to not hire her. They continue to call business associates of hers trying to ferret out, supposedly, her ability to perform, which became very problematic for her. And I believe that this board and this organization owes her, number one, a thank you for the courtesies which she has continued to extend in this community, and number two, an apology for any miscommunications that may have happened between the various bodies, and number three, a continued welcome to a business that is here in our community, duly incorporated and available to do business. It was insinuated that she would not be available, that she would be a pass-through situation, and in fact, the opposite is true. We have pass-throughs who are getting the business here in Pensacola instead of a local company always doing it. So I just encourage you, when it goes to Operations and Audit, to go thoroughly through it. Find out the role that Mr. Asmore, the mayor, and people who are not listed as your official contractors. I believe there were 3 people listed who were going to be the contracting elements, and that no longer is the reality. So I would just really encourage you to look very closely at all elements. And I thank Ms. Mauiz again for her belief in our city.
Thank you, Dottie. Ms. Scott.
Well, I just want to ditto what Councilwoman Meyer said, but I am a little perturbed that, we had an understanding that the city would engage her in conversation, and now what I'm hearing is that if she's going to participate at the level that we thought she was going to participate, that there might be some type of subcontracting that would have to occur. And that to me is just goes to an equity issue, and I just don't think that that's a fair way that we should be conducting business.
Well, I think it's because they said you had to be a subcontractor.
Well, that's what Kim just said, that if we brought her in now, she'd have to
well, to be paid at any time, to bring her in to be paid, she'd have to become a subcontractor.
Right, but that there was some additional, that there was an RFP process. Well, my understanding was that they were going to work with her. I mean, whether it's as a subcontractor, whether it's an agreement, but it sounds to me like there's now would have to require some additional steps that we were not anticipating in the beginning, whether it's through subcontracting or anything else.
Ms. Carter.
The distinction here is right now, the local people are bringing, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, they're bringing money to the city, and they're paying for the use of our park. Okay, so you got that. That's the kind of climate we're in now. What she's doing is something different, and that's why I wanted us to understand the distinction, which you're right, we cannot do right now. We do need to succinctly see what's the difference between the two, to see how we can use it on a local level and how we can do it on a national level. There is a difference between promoting on a national level and a local level, but they do have to work together in tandem, which is what the city has done very well, but have not on a national level. And Chair, I think that's what we're looking for, national dollars. We want to be seen all over this country. We want to make this a destination spot, and we can't do it without help. And we have to accept that we need help. And all we're saying is, if the Maritime, and I'm sure everybody on this board will do it, we'll get in there and we'll make it happen. We have overcome so many things. This is not difficult. We'll figure it out. I know.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a motion to call the question. All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have motion second on the floor. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Merding, if you will take that on your committee, we appreciate it. Next item, action items, budget amendment number 17. Ed Spears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another one of the budget amendments, basically moving funds around internally within the line items to prevent negative balances. If you'll notice the bottom of budget amendment 17 column, this is a zero net change, and it just moves the funds into appropriate line items. Amber's here if there's any questions, and she has all the detailed information.
Amber, you have anything to add on that?
I will simply tell you that it's so that I can pay the bills. I mean, if we don't move the line items, then I can't pay the bills.
Zero-sum game, as you said. All in favor of the budget amendment number 17, say, do I hear a motion? Budget amendment 17.
Well, we obviously already heard it.
Details.
What's that? Motion, do I hear a motion?
Move the approval. Yes.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Opposed, no.
One no, I'm sorry.
Dr. No.
Next item, financial policies and
Roll's called
procedures.
up yonder.
That was just referred to committee, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Breeze is my second motion.
I'm sorry, that carried with audit operations. I'm sorry.
Visionary right issue.
Updates, administration, Mr. Spears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've handled the two action items. There is one item I wanted to bring to your attention. Your November meeting is scheduled for the 21st, which is the Wednesday immediately prior to Thanksgiving. I want to see if you want to cancel,
I'll try to keep it
reschedule,
short.
or have that meeting.
Board,
Let's move it a week earlier.
any other better suggestions like canceling it?
Short of that, I mean, you know.
Like a week after.
Week after.
Week after, okay, I don't care. I can rise above principle.
Well, what's wrong with the 21st? I'm sorry. Did I miss
It's
something?
the day before Thanksgiving.
It's the day before I think said we, yeah.
Thanksgiving Eve.
I would be in favor of either the previous week or the next week, but not skipping the whole month, because I don't want us to sit on this white production issue for a long time. So it doesn't matter to me, the week before, the week after, I don't care.
I like the week after. I have something on the 14th.
I'll be out of the country on the week before, so.
So it's kind of, people are kind of zeroing in here.
Then let's have it the week before if you're out of the country.
On the 28th. That'll be 28th, same time, same place. Everybody good with that? All right.
Do we have any problem with with this place?
I'll make it happen.
If we do that, we're also going to be looking, I would imagine, at the Christmas conflict. Is Christmas going to conflict, or is it the week before Christmas? Because it might make sense to make that the November/December meeting if we start running into Christmas.
Let's see how we go on the 28th, and then
That's fine.
we'll take that up.
Your December meeting will be scheduled for the 19th of Wednesday.
Okay, I couldn't remember how it all fell.
All right, we'll move our next CMPA meeting to the 28th of November. Ed?
I'd like to ask Kim to come forward and discuss the handouts you have on upcoming events. Specifically to talk about the one 2 weeks from now with our national promoter and the 5 events over the next several months that he's going to be promoting.
A couple of things are in front of you. 2 things specifically, which is Soul Bowl, which is this weekend, and I hope to see everyone out there. Does everybody know what Soul Bowl is? It used to take place at Legion Field. They've outgrown Legion Field, and now we are moving them over into the stadium. If you go by, you'll see the goalpost. City's been working on getting those up the last week or so, and we're very, very excited about it coming into the stadium. There'll be some vendors on the outside, some children's activities, and then everything will be inside the venue for football itself. So we're very excited. And I'm going to actually real quickly go over some of the events that we have coming up. This weekend, of course, is Soul Bowl. The following weekend, we actually have a Battle of the Bands. It's a Friday night and a Saturday night. Tickets go on sale tomorrow at the Blue Wahoo Stadium, and I'm hoping to have everyone have tickets. 2 weeks following that, we have a Veterans Day concert, which will be Sunday night and Monday. And then we will have a New Year's Eve concert. And these are all through a private promoter that is coming down, and they are actually booking the acts, building a stage, not in the amphitheater. They're actually building the stage right in front of the, right next to the stadium, where they can actually have anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 people show up. The amphitheater, according to him, will not be enough space for the amount of people he needs to have come to these concerts. So I'm hoping everyone will show up, come in, enjoy. Maybe we can get you guys some VIP passes or meeting the artist when they come through.
Where are they going to build the stage at again?
They're going to build a stage right, you know where the parking lot is? You know, I call it the exhibit grounds, but it's actually where they were going to be building the museum.
Yeah, well, it's the museum parcel, directly adjacent to Plaza de Villers, which in this map, it'll be on the north side of this green space.
Stage built that way, like
stage facing
They're going to face
south.
the water.
Is that a paid event?
That is a paid event. We are getting paid for that.
So what all are you going to block off for that?
We will actually block, there's not a whole lot to block off. We'll actually block like a portion of the road because, like, once again, they're building the stage and there'll be some artist tents behind there. And there'll be a semi as they build the stage. But the parking lot will be open and everything forward will be open. They're actually renting the amphitheater space, the festival grounds, and what we've named the exhibition space. And they're getting charged for load in and load out. So it will be a nice little bundle at the end of the day.
Do we get a surcharge on ticket sales on that?
You do get a surcharge on ticket sales, and that comes directly to the CMPA. We are encouraging all our promoters and all our event organizers to go through the Blue Wahoo's ticket office, because we get $1 for every ticket they sell.
And do we know who those acts are New Year's Eve?
The only one that's coming to my mind right now is Tracy Lawrence. The Battle of the Bands, they are some regional, and then there's a couple of acts coming out of New York and out of California. So they are some headliner bands, or not headliner bands, they are opening bands for some of the other ones, but I can definitely get you a list. Ed, do you remember what he mentioned?
I'm sorry, I don't. The
Yeah.
country one was the only one that I recalled.
So that 10,000 people, that would be substantially more than we've ever had in that park for the ball. What are the ball games, 3,000 or 4,000?
5,000.
So that's what he's projecting. This first one, we may not get a whole lot, and he's understanding, but the Veterans Day and the New Year's Eve, he's anticipating a large crowd. So
and you're saying that the amphitheater is not large enough for them?
No.
Well,
because that's I'm trying to visualize that, because that's a
3 to 4.
7,000 to 8,000, but those are standees in the amphitheater area.
I think he's saying the actual amphitheaters, the stage is not big enough, or
the actual venue itself isn't large enough.
Which we think we can get 4,000 or 5,000. He wants 10,000. Great.
Yeah, but did I hear you? Can I speak?
Ms. Carter.
Did I hear you said that this year it may not be that much, but that's the goal?
The Battle of the Bands is not going to be that much. He's not anticipating that because it's kind of a low-end concert. But the next two, he's anticipating between 5,000 to 8,000.
Councilwoman Myers.
Now, where is the handicap parking going to be for those events?
That will be in the parking lot. That will be the closest there is.
Okay,
because
so
everything else will be
they're
blocked
not
off.
going to be using the parking lot for
No.
anything, just parking? Oh,
And he's leasing the full parking lot.
He's leasing the parking lot as
Basically
well.
leasing the entire property except the stadium.
okay, all right.
Kim, where is the calendar of events for events that are
You can actually, we have a website now, and that is actually on our website. It is, oh gosh, heavens, Betsy.
Pensacola Community Maritime Park.
Yeah, it's a really long one. And it's actually on your, the Night at the Maritime.
Oh, yes.
That is listed on there as well.
Yes, that long one.
And I'm hoping everyone has liked us on Facebook, because you'll get normal invites and information about what's going on at the event, what's either going on in the stadium or the park itself. And then on to another matter, this event here, the Night at the Maritime, we are selling tickets. It's a dinner theater. They will be performing. We have a group coming out. It is a mystery. and you will buy a table, which I know everyone wants to buy a table, right? Or an individual seat, and you come out, you dine. Nick's Boathouse is actually a sponsor for this. We'll have a large tent, some heaters, because we're not sure if it's going to get cold or not. And then, of course, we have a theater group that's coming out and doing a performance in the audience. They're not necessarily using the amphitheater, but they're going to be in the audience performing.
Is it the Act 4 that's doing
Yes, ma'am.
that? Act 4.
Are we the producer of this?
We are, yes.
Can you tell me what the fees?
The tickets themselves, like if you bought a table, it'd be $320. And it's 8 seats.
About the promoters, what he's paying.
What he's paying, right now, his price is up to $8,000, and it continues to grow.
$8,000. Plus we get a surcharge.
And because we charge for staff hours, any staff that we have out there, whether it's technical support or Maritime, they get charged for all of those hours.
So I noticed this has like a tent, it looks like it's in front. Is that on, how is that going to be set up?
I call it a circus tent. It reminds me of a very large circus tent. It's going to be right in front of the amphitheater because we're not actually performing on the stage. The Acts for Hire, they actually work in the audience. You become part of the mystery.
Right, I understand that.
And we've actually had a pretty good sales so far. The other events we have coming up, we have a couple of fitness events that are coming out there. We have Zumba, we have not aerobics, Zumba and belly dancing will be performing. We also have, of course, the park dedication that I'm hoping everyone will be out there on the 17th, and we do have a country artist that will be performing on our stage, and everybody is going to be, okay. In December, we're doing Light Up the Park. That is actually the light posts that are around the park. We sell those posts, and we have local businesses come out and decorate them, and then there's a contest, and we announce the winner at our holiday concert. We've invited local churches to come out and do a musical, which will be held in the amphitheater. That is a free event. They come out, they perform. We have a celebrity that will award the Light Up the Square, and we charge $100 to $200 per pole for them to come decorate. And there are some restrictions that they have to apply. We're also looking at doing a movie in the park. We've already scheduled that, a holiday movie. It will be while the kids are on vacation, so they can come out on a Thursday night, they can enjoy the movie and not have to worry about going to school the next day. We're having a craft show. We're actually, that will also be in December, and a lot of these are going to be in line with what's going on in the stadium, so we're working together to make sure our theme is consistent throughout. The stadium is bringing in an ice skating rink and a couple other things that they'll be doing inside, and we'll be coordinating our efforts along with their efforts. And then, of course, we're going to have our New Year's Eve concert. Other things that we're looking at for the future, we've already booked 3 festivals for the spring, 2 other concerts for the spring, and then we're looking at doing a drive-in movie versus a movie at the amphitheater. We're just working out some sound issues, and that will happen in the parking lot and with some seating and things of that nature. And that would take us all the way up to May.
Is the New Year's Eve thing going to conflict with the dropping of the Pelican, or is the Pelican going to move out there?
There'll be 2 separate events.
There'll be 2 separate events, and right now the promoter is trying to work with the DIB, so they'll have simultaneous fireworks. And so I haven't heard back what's been going, but they're actually willing to pay for a portion of that as well.
It'd be cool to have the Pelican thing out there in the park, instead of having 2 separate events.
Take people away from Ragtime Grill. You gonna be open? You gonna be open?
It may be open then.
Dottie, you want to address this?
Yes.
Dottie.
First, you keep referencing the he. I was wondering if we could have the name of this national promoter that's got 5 events coming up, you know.
He's Starliner Productions.
Starliner?
Starliner out of Birmingham.
Out of Birmingham.
Out of Birmingham, okay. And I was going to raise the question of the DIB and correlating it with the Special Events Committee, because I attend all of those meetings, and none of this was discussed openly with them, and perhaps you and Terry Kuviac are working hand in hand, but it does seem like we need to have seamless integration of events when we do things downtown, particularly with the noise factors, because if you have the broadcast of the music and we've got 4 stages, already downtown, this will be a 5th stage. We do need to coordinate that and have the quiet time. And my question goes to the actual fees that we're collecting. This individual is going to have the use of the Maritime Park for $8,000, and will that include?
That's a day.
That's for 1 day?
Yeah.
Okay. So do we charge for street closures and security and all that, or do they do that separately?
That's separate. That's through the special event permit, but they pay for all of that.
Okay. And I know that sometimes the city waives certain fees and that there's TDC promotional money. Is any of that being offered to these promoters, or is that off the table?
Currently, we don't waive any fees.
Okay. So no city fees, no city sponsorship, no TDC?
I'm not.
Well,
no.
they get, the promoter obviously could go get his own TDC funds like it's been done in the
Right,
past.
but it's not being done through the city is what I'm asking, because I know that a certain
No.
part was set aside for the city for this when we were, talking about it. Okay. And the final thing would be the security issues. I know that when we do events downtown for the DIB, we are currently having some issues of individuals with private groups who feel that the right to freedom of speech is somehow being imposed upon when they are not allowed to set up, even though a special permit has been pulled. So when this individual has things going on at the Maritime Park, and a group wants to provide information and set up a table, is that something that is allowed, and have you considered
They would need
that?
to go through they would need to go through the promoter, since they're the promote organizer. The promote organizer actually secures the this particular individual has secured 2 securities. We contract with the city for the services we need, and then also he's contracted with the security agency that uses the Civic Center. So they would have to go directly to the promoter.
I just want to give you a heads up. Although the DIB contracts directly with the city, there's currently apparently 2 different trains of thought in terms of what the city is allowed for their policemen to do in support of a private permit or a permit for that. So
we work closely with the police department. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing to keep in mind also, Dottie, is this is private property leased to this company, and they are not public streets versus Palafox. Palafox is a public right-of-way. Spring Street, Cedar Street, Museum Drive, those are not public streets. They are owned by this corporation. And we set up rules to where we allow the public to use it, and those rules are subject to this board's approval. And
I understand that. I just forewarn you all, the individuals who have raised the question appear to believe that any time public dollars are used in a project or in any way in support of an event, that the absolute freedom to occupy any space exists. So I'm just suggesting you really carefully, structure how you're going to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. Anything, Councilwoman Marshall?
Well, I do think there's a difference between an event that we would sponsor or the city would sponsor and a private business that has leased a piece of property to put on a private event.
that's correct.
I think there's a difference.
I think so, Colonel.
All right. I have 3 quick questions, Kim. Who took Mr. Flaherty's place?
Brian Cooper.
Is he on board now?
He is. He was here a couple of minutes ago, but he had another meeting that had, let's schedule, he wasn't aware of this one yet.
Cooper.
Second.
Cooper, Cooper.
Second question. A lot is going on. Is there a new section within the City and Rec that's doing all of this stuff that you're talking about?
Cultural Arts Division, the Maritime Cultural Arts Division.
Are those new hires or what?
Well, yes, we've actually put one on staff right now named Heather Chenoweth. She's a full-time staff person. We have a part-time staff person that is there for support until we need another additional staff. And then I am actually there, 50% of the time.
Okay. Are you still doing the job you were doing before this came about? Or you do ahead of it, I guess is what I'm asking.
I actually received a promotion, and this is a part of that promotion.
Okay. And how was this new section? I mean, since we're short money and everything, and you're billing us, how did all this happen? Because Mr. Flaherty was saying that there would be no increase in government.
There hasn't technically. What we do is we only bring on staff as we need. As you can see, we have a pretty full plate right now. And then also trying to go out and drum up more business to come into the park. That's a big key issue. Heather is the only full-time staff person, and she's been with us the entire time. She just became a full-time staff person. We were paying her 40 hours. She was working 50. Now she can come on, and I don't have to give her a day off. And then we brought on a gentleman literally the last couple of days to help us with these upcoming events. And then, of course, I oversee it, and I say 50% of my time goes to the Maritime Park, and we'll just leave it at that.
Okay. And the last question, where do we stand on the vendor RPF request?
That actually, you know what, I've got some information. That is actually already up on the website. And we've been, vendors have been calling, and we've been sending the information out. It was publicized. We have a mandatory RFP meeting with all the vendors That is next week, and it's 1:30 in this room, October 25th.
Are you saying these are the people who have responded to the?
I don't know who's responded yet. This is a meeting. That way we can talk about it if there's any questions. If you want to, you have to be at this meeting in order to apply for this, so that everybody's on the same page. If someone didn't understand, then we can explain it all to them.
Okay. A follow-on question. Has the Blue Wahoos, that organization, showed any interest in the vendor program? Do you know?
Not directly to me.
Okay, because what happens, I think, and this happened, and I think this is why we're in the situation we're in now. We do these RFPs, right? And then nobody thinks that somebody in-house is going to apply. And I mentioned this when we were talking about the vendors. If the Blue Wahoos apply, then they have everything in place based on cost. They already have the carts and all of that. And it pretty much slows up others from applying and business going to other people who would normally.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but in the contract, I think they can vend anyways.
Yes.
So they don't necessarily need to go through this. And we do encourage our promoters and special event planners to use their services because, once again, we get 20% of all their concessions. So their alcohol services, any beverage services, if we don't have a vendor to do that, then we encourage them to use the Wahoos for that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Jones.
The Wahoos actually have a fairly extensive program for the off-season. Isn't the ice rink part of their program?
Yes, during it'll be during December.
They have a very extensive program of using the stadium during the off-season.
Right, and I know from going to a number of games, they always have they already have some of these carts that you were talking about.
And they were actually the beer vendor for Latino Fest. And so that was nice. We haven't actually found a vendor outside of the Wahoos actually to be a beer vendor.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking, that they have kind of.
Yeah. Now we're looking, but we quite, like I said, the promoters are looking. They're looking for nonprofits to come in and do it, but a lot of them aren't licensed for it. That's been our biggest issue.
Thank you,
Kim. Anything else?
I have one question about this.
Ms. Carter?
I have a question about the Sobo.
Okay.
Are you going to have vendors for this, and if so, how much are they?
It's $100. All they do is contact us. We're having a mandatory walkthrough tomorrow, 5:15. They need to have their registration form and paid in full. We will go over any requirements. They will be actually, they are coming under the heading of special event permitting through the state of Florida. But there will be some inspections, so they are going to have to follow some help the codes. That's what we're checking on.
Mr. Marty. I'm sorry, Ms. Carter, were you finished?
I'm finished, yes.
Mr. Marty. I'd asked you before the meeting, and I'd asked this previously about the, in order to provide a greater incentive for the vendors, it's got to be very difficult when there aren't as many events scheduled this early on as everybody had hoped, to try and find out what they could open up in the county, since the city has an ordinance that basically precludes it. And could you bring us up to date on that?
I've actually talked to the county, and I'm hoping we continue to talk to the county. We talked to the Parks and Recreation Department. We've talked to the gentleman that's over athletics. And unfortunately with them, they're not just one division. Each of their parks are individually manned and operated, and that's what we were trying to get them into the parks. When it comes to anything on the sidewalks and in this, like Perdido or Cantonment, those kind of areas, they were a little unsure, but right now they're kind of in the same situation we are. It's an unknown. They may be in a wait-and-see mode. Currently, their ball fields are already manned by vendors that are operating out of their concession areas, which would be perfect. And we will continually look for different venues and opportunities. We have an event schedule list for any vendor that wants to get on the circuit. Pensacola and the county has enough special events that if you're actually on that circuit, you can make quite a bit of money, but you do have to be ready to roll with that. And we do actually have that list in the points of contacts for them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
is like your session tomorrow and the next one that you're scheduling, I think you need to make that available and kind of open the door for them so that they can see that there's a lot more opportunity for them, that they can justify, the significant expense that they're going to incur
I agree.
to do this. The other thing I'd ask you to, if you can run down the events, you've already run down the ones that are scheduled, but can you run down the ones that have occurred so far and give us the attendance and what the financial benefit to this board, either directly or indirectly?
Latino Fest, we had about 2,500. I haven't got the hardcore figures, but that's kind of what we're guesstimating at this point. We made about $5,000 on that particular event. Straight up, that paid for staffing. They rented the parking lot and they rented the amphitheater in the back of the house. In September, we didn't have a lot going on, quite honestly. We had a movie in the park. That was a success. But the problem with September is we were in competition with DeLuna Fest and we were in competition with Seafood Fest. And so those are very large events for Pensacola. So anything we would have would not have been as successful, so we didn't want to put it out there. We couldn't actually get anybody interested in doing anything in September. But in October, every weekend we actually have something in there. In November, 3 weekends are full, and in December, 2 weekends are full. And then, of course, during the summer, we had the movies in the park, which had a great attendance. That was no direct revenue toward us. Most of our revenue this summer came from parking, and that was over $140,000 that we brought in just for the CMPA lot. That was a large revenue generator for us. Other than that, we've done movies in the park, just general stuff. Our biggest conflict was figuring out how to manage programs and activities during ball season, and that will always be a challenge. We do have the ball season listed for next year, so we can go ahead and pop those dates in. We've reserved dates already for groups that have come in, but that's going to always be our biggest challenge. If they're doing something Friday and Saturday night, it's really hard to put on something large. We tried to do a midweek event. It didn't draw the attendance that we were wanting, and we had vendors out there, but they weren't making any money, so they were a little dissatisfied as well.
Tuesday night bands on the beach,
yep.
That is a huge thing.
Huge.
And that's, I live on the beach, and people flock to that, and so it can be done midweek. It's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, Thursday, we were looking at Thursday, which was because we shut down. I used to do the Plaza de Luna through CRA, and so we actually, my office actually booked those bands. When that event went over to DIB, we opted not to bring that in, and that may be something we look at. Right now, we are looking at putting out some contracts or some bids for promoters to come in and do a concert series for the summer starting in May and going all the way through September. So it would be big named acts that would come in, but we would actually contract those services out.
All right. Nothing else from Kim. Thank you very much. So you're very busy. We'll move on. You don't have anything else, Ed?
Mr. Chairman, just encourage each of the trustees to go take a look at the stadium in the football configuration. That was one of the major promises of this entire project was multi-use. I've seen a lot of comments on various websites that we'll never see it happen. No one would let anyone go touch that field other than baseball, and this weekend it's going to happen. So
goalposts are up.
Is it configured now for the?
Yes.
It is. The goalposts are up. The fence has been moved, and the field should be striped.
Kids are going to love playing on that nice.
It looks good. Councilwoman Myers.
Yes, I have a question. When you have events in the stadium, are people allowed to bring chairs
into the stadium itself?
On the grounds, on the not in
the berm.
Yeah, the berm.
No, ma'am. No, you would bring a blanket and actually sit on the ground.
Okay, well that's problematic, and let me tell you why. I received a complaint from a woman. All of you know her, but I'm not going to tell you who she is. But she has had 2 knee replacements, and she wanted to go to an event. I think it was at one of the theater events, and could not go with her grandchildren because she was not allowed to take a little fold-out chair to sit on and could not get on the ground. Now, there are a lot of people who can't get on the ground and get back up.
In the stadium?
In the stadium
That's
itself.
what I'm talking about.
There's 5,000 chairs that she could have utilized.
Okay, on the ground?
In the stadium, in the seating bowl.
In the stadium.
Okay, so you're saying that for those types of events where you take can sit on the ground, you can sit...
Or you can sit in the stands.
Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I haven't been to one of those events, so I'm just asking.
And most people congregate on one side, especially for the movies inside the stadium, because they're viewing the screen itself, and you can sit in the stands, the concessions are open, so it's fully accessible.
All right.
Mr. McCormick.
What about the amphitheater? Can they bring a chair there, or is it just blankets?
Right now, you can.
We do allow chairs. It's not encouraged because the four corners of the chairs dig into the ground, and that's a maintenance issue, but we haven't prohibited chairs.
Currently, we allow chairs and coolers, and then what we've done on nights that we've had events, we actually shuttle people as many as we can. I've used my private car. We've got a golf cart that every now and then we have access to, and we shuttle seniors back and forth to their cars. Because it is, if anybody's walked it, I don't care if you're disabled, it is a haul. It is, you're definitely getting some exercise. So we have made that effort to make it easier on those individuals that, it is difficult to walk out there.
Are you competing with taxis still?
They're not out there in full swing, although I think with our season coming up, we have contacted them and they should start coming back.
Well, I think if you're, you might want to check the legality of providing those services to one group of people but not another. I mean, if you're offering that service to people who have a mobility impairment, who, like some seniors, but you don't have a wheelchair accessible vehicle,
yeah.
I think that's problematic.
And most of them have flagged us down, to be honest with you.
Pardon?
Most of us flagged us down. Like we do during the ball games, we actually have a cart, and they'll flag you down for assistance.
Okay, for wheelchair accessible?
I don't believe any of the golf carts are wheelchair accessible. But they do have a trolley that takes them straight to the door. You park over at the P&J lot, and the trolley picks them up and drops them right at the door.
And that's a wheelchair accessible
trolley?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. We're going to move on to Design Development Committee.
Design
Dr.
Development
Jones.
Committee has not met. However, at the request of City Council, I did meet with Brian Spencer to look at the temporary wayside sign color scheme. We were asked if the Maritime Park has a color palette, which we do not have, nor do I think we necessarily need one. And so this, I think, was distributed to everyone, the color scheme of the wayside signage. Do you have any, Mr. Chairman, any update on the larger sign?
I do not have an update.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on to Operations and Audit. Mr. Merding, you're going to report on Visionary Right Productions?
No.
Right.
Are you having a match?
We've nailed it. We've resolved all the problems, and
all right.
She starts today. I am going to meet with her right afterward this. We did not meet. Mr. Spears and I were not able to touch base at the end of last week as far as scheduling, which we would have ordinarily have done Monday, but we've got enough carryover that I just wanted to review the things that our committee recommended last time, and the board, I think, adopted in most cases unanimously, and I'd like to just go over those, one of which was, I understand that it was the vote of this board that you were to send a letter to this, whatever the group was, and I understand you did that. Was there any representative of this board in attendance at that?
You talking about it with the Pensacola baseball?
No, I'm talking about with the big sign.
We have not come to resolution of that yet.
The CMPA, we did send the letter to City Council and CRA before that meeting. I personally placed it at each council member's desk, and Councilwoman Myers can certainly chime in, and it was alluded to during the meeting, but the focus was on the sign, and the sign was approved, but any discussion of the larger sign issue was not a thing undertaken.
In operations, the budget that we adopted last time, we have a $526,800 shortfall. I've heard two numbers with regard to Lamar. One is at 200 and one was 250 with an annual override. Time is passing, our deficit is not getting any smaller, and that's something that I think all of the other things, I met with Mr. Baldwin yesterday for about an hour trying to come up with other money-raising activities, not counting the surcharge issue, which, and I'm going to be meeting someone this week talking about naming rights, and I talked to Mr. Baldwin about that. You know, and I think it was the sense of this board that the more people out there looking for that, it's good to have competition. The greatest thing in the world would be to have two people bidding against one another for any of these things. So I understand from Mr. Spears and Mr. Baldwin that Mr. Spears sent a letter with regard to the meeting with the team on the surcharge issue. And has that meeting been?
I'm gonna address that at the end of your report.
Okay.
But let me ask you, while you're talking about Mr. Baldwin, what did he give you on the naming? What did he tell you?
The somehow connection with the auto thing was a no-go. And so he said, you know, there really isn't anything.
So there's nothing in the works right now?
No. And so that's why I said, you know, I was going to pursue something. The other thing that was discussed was the talking about deferring the note to Mr. Studer or the ball team for for one additional year. Mr. Remington said he would take that up. I don't know where that stands. The board adopted unanimously to request the city to apply for the BIG and the Tier 2 grants on behalf of the CMPA. And Mr. Spears, what's the situation on that?
We did apply, Dottie's right here, for the BP opportunities, 5 grants, and I want to publicly thank Dottie for her efforts. I know she was being pulled in 20 different directions. She did a wonderful job. I read just simply for grammar and spelling each one of the applications, and couldn't have given any input anyway. They were so well done, and those were submitted on time for those opportunities. So we have $2.5 million worth of requests in for BP funding through that opportunity. The other 2 grants, I've received no instructions to do anything at this point in time.
Well, there was instructions from this board, to pursue them, right. And so the city has blown you off, basically?
Has not responded.
Was that a written request, or is that not the way you do business?
It was not a written request.
Would it be of any benefit? Would that, force them to put a written response?
I'll follow up directly on that particular issue.
Hold you right there. And Dottie, I wanted to thank you when you were up here before on doing those. As y'all recall, Dottie did that. We even offered to pay her, and she refused that. And we appreciate that, again, putting those in. And as y'all know, that's a $57 million bucket. There's a lot of people going after that bucket. But, I think we've got a very unique situation here. So we'll see what comes out of there. But thank you again for that.
Would you just give us a quick summary of
Sure.
If 5 grants?
Sure. If you'll recall, I passed out a proposal of all of them. The only one that I did not write was the break front because it did not comply in any way, the breakwater. But we did, let's see if I can remember them all. We went for the concert series. We went for, Teddy, which is a tourism event development incentive fund. We went for,
water taxi.
The water taxi. The water taxi was very interesting because we had supposedly a turnkey company that was interested in doing it, that had contacted the CRA, and they brought one of their boats down here for us to look at. However, on the day that he came down with the boat, he informed me that he had sold 3 of the 6 boats, and if we were interested in buying them, he would be glad to sell them to us. The whole I'm going to do it kind of went away. But since then, I've engaged with a couple of other people who are very interested. And so if we get that money, I'm very comfortable that we can find a turnkey company.
Pickens Ferry dock is finished.
It is complete. And
what's involved?
It's a
service permitting or something?
It actually is not the same level of docking that would be required for an individual boat, and what we put in ours was a portable floating dock with walk down so that you could have a regular boat pull up, and I think a similar situation would have to be added over there. However, we have been, several of us in the community have been working with the National Park Service trying to get some compliance support, since they built half. I mean, it's kind of like building one side of a bridge and not having the other half. So there's a little bit of leverage that may come down, and the Park Service may need to offer us some support on this end. If that happens, then we'll be in really good shape. But all of that,
the Island Authority?
you would have to negotiate permit stuff with them.
I'm talking about, I mean, it seems to me that they would want that, and the Island Authority gets a percentage from all of the tourism business and the businesses out there.
There are several proposals that the Island Authority has put out, the NERDA money. They went for some BP stuff, and then they are also talking with the National Park Service. So there are quite a few conversations. The problem is it all keeps coming back to the city, and the city is kind of the one that's in the driver's seat. But they were supportive of the water taxi. I mean, they worked with us to get that one going. So I think that as we see which ones really get to that next level, that you can evolve to a workable situation. I don't know whether, to get the money out of BP would be advantageous, or if there might be other monies that you might get more from. But the only one that did not comply with the marketing situation was that the breakwater, but all the others that we proposed, we did put in there. And everyone in the community was very cooperative. We had a vetting team, so there were I think there were 18 grants that moved forward from Pensacola, but everyone worked to put them at the highest level they could, and I hope that ours will be one of the ones that BP does fund. And I was going to speak earlier on the Design Development Committee. I just was wanting to make certain what the process is in the building of the buildings that are going up. Does the Design Development Committee have any input as to what ends up being down there, or is everything up to the city, and then once the city approves it, you guys just get to say that's good, or does it go in the reverse? That was my question.
I think it's out of our hands at this point. Now, it might be mistaken, but we've negotiated with the city, and then the city approves it at this point. Building.
I think there should be some oversight, however, by somebody, so that the buildings are consistent with the entire appearance of the whole situation, including the stadium. Yeah, something like that. Let me ask also about grants. One of the things that we've been criticized about is that we have a maritime park and with minimal fishing but no maritime. And one of the obstructions to this are the pilings and the rickrack that are down there already. And it would seem appropriate to apply to someone, perhaps BP or another, to get rid of all that so we truly do have a maritime park and boats can come up there safely and anchor and or dock once we get a dock, but to anchor safely and watch the fireworks as she proposed, and catch fly balls from the ball club.
That's certainly been a topic of Mr. Merding several times, and I don't know if that's part of Dottie.
Well, I really appreciate your bringing that up again, and I do believe that you again could apply for NERDA money, National Resource Development. I forget exactly what it stands for, but they continue to receive requests. I mean, there's a ranking, but they continue to have more put up, and all you have to do is show that you're going to make natural resources available, or you're in some way going to repair natural resources. And it looks right now like some of the money that was going to come through for economic development may be getting shoved back to, federal and state NERDA type projects. So I would encourage you to look at that. I think the city has put some forward, but you as an entity can make a proposal. I mean, any little nature club can make a NERDA request. So that might be something, again, you want to look at.
Are you willing to do another grant application?
Yes, but this time I need $200 up front because I kept running out of ink.
I think we could raise that in this group right here today. Another carry forward from last month was for the chairman to draft a letter sending appraisals of the balance of the parks to the commercial realtors in town.
I've not done that.
That has not been done, that's correct.
Is there a, is just an oversight, or is there a reason why it's not been done beyond that?
The latter, we just haven't done it, which I apologize. I remember that direction, and I have not talked to Mr. Spears about that, but we will do that.
Okay, all right, because
There's no hold up on my part.
Well, I was sensing a conspiracy. So.
No, I did, as I told you, I think at your audit committee, that, the city was looking at bringing somebody on for economic development and looking at those parcels, but at this point, I don't think they have.
Well, I think it was the vote of this board unanimously.
Yeah, to do it anyway.
And that even though acknowledging that this board doesn't have the power to sign a commission agreement, a commercial realtor can certainly be a buyer's agent, and the best thing that could happen to the city and the best thing that could happen to the board would be commercial realtors bringing interested parties to the table, two of them over the same parcel and bidding each other up.
We definitely need to get it out. The only thing I remember being hesitant on that we couldn't offer a commission, or we're not supposed to because we're not the one paying it. But we'll get something out to them. I do want to say, too, which is a little independent of us, but at one time the city had entertained hiring a group out of Atlanta called the Dawson Group. And that didn't work out, consulting fees and all. But it's my understanding that Mr. Studer has hired them, and I only know that because they made a reservation to go eat at the Fish House tonight. And so I asked their representative, Andrew Rothfeder, who negotiated that building, I said, what are they doing in town? He said, we've hired them to help us with our stuff. And I said, remember, we got those other parcels right there. And he said, oh, we've been looking at them. So for whatever that's worth, and the Dawson Group's a huge developing company, construction company out of Atlanta. So that was for whatever that's worth.
The last thing was the trying to get an agreement as to the beneficial use date from the team.
From the what?
From the professional baseball. There's a point that Mr. Gunner made several times is that we need an agreement as to the beneficial use date, because that's the trigger, that's the base point for I think lease payments and other things. And so I don't perceive a problem, but it's just a housekeeping thing that needs to be done.
That's on the list of issues at the meeting we've requested.
Okay. And that's not been set?
Here,
It's been accepted, but we don't have a calendar date yet. And
okay.
I believe
They've agreed to meet.
Chairman's got a letter to that effect.
in a nutshell, the letter from Mr. Remington, which, as you know, is Mr. Studer's attorney, so they'd be happy to sit down with CMPA, discuss the issues. They'd like somebody from finance, Dick Barker, or someone else to be present. They want Mr. Gray involved. And when it came to the actual, let's see where it is here. They're very open, basically what this letter says. And as Scott Remington told us, either it's your committee or this committee, that Mr. Studer's a problem solver and wants to be a problem solver in this issue. He did ask that if we were going to actually be talking about revisiting some of those financial issues, that that he meet, I don't want to say out of the sunshine and sound that like he's doing something underhanded. He don't want to meet the full board talking about some sensitive financial issues. Can meet with me and then any other individuals one-on-one that would like to meet with them. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and then maybe get Mr. Remington to get the details out that, if we notify it, I don't think that's a meeting we can notify to keep out of the sunshine, so we couldn't have more than one of us present, but they certainly could do, I know Mr. Remington could, especially you as chairman of the audit committee, do a presentation to you as well, and what their issues are and not issues are. Sounds like you've been meeting with some of them already, so that's good. So that's where we are on that. This just came back to us on the 16th, October 16th, and we will set that up before our next meeting and see where we are.
That's it for me.
Anything else under audit and operations? Equal business.
One thing,
Mr. Murdy.
I would like to, since we didn't meet, and I'm going to be leaving, and I'd like to try and schedule a meeting of the committee, Ed, to see you about maybe next Monday afternoon. And would it be any possibility that you could be present at Monday or not? We generally meet at like 1.
Mr. Murring, that is a city council committee day, so this room would not be available, but the smaller conference room.
Well, we generally
would be.
meet downstairs.
Right, I'll just have to check that schedule, but it should work out.
I have a meeting that evening at 5, but.
Well, we generally start at 1, and you would be the only item on the agenda.
My meeting is not in Pensacola, but I can possibly conference call into that.
Okay.
That's a possibility. I think I can do that.
Okay. Would you, Ed, make sure you have her contact information and hopefully we can get a quorum, of the committee, even though it's short notice. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Carter.
Yes, I have in front of you the final Covenant with the Community report for review, conversation, and approval hopefully today. Here's what it would look like. I got a copy so you guys can see. What I'm proposing is that if approved today, we would make utilize the funds in the EBO that is left to make a certain amount of copy. As I would look at different vendors, maybe at least 500, and get them back out to the community and have that conversation that we actually did do the report, and that it would be available in PDF on the website when they want it. And I think that concludes that part of the process.
Anything else on the committee?
Nothing else.
Thank you for all your hard work on that. I know you've beat us over the head making sure we all were approving that, and you took our comments, and I appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, we're going to make a recommendation to approve it today.
I'll move to approve the final report.
Second.
Motion for approval, and I got a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a couple.
Ms. Scott.
These are just probably just kind of minor stuff because it's the first time I've read it through all the way. And it might, just some corrections in terms of typos and some grammatical things and just in terms of some of the sentence structures on some of them, on some of these things. Is it a way, and it's quite a, it's several of them. I was wondering if maybe I could get a Word copy and just kind of maybe give to Ed the, some of my recommendations, just in terms of some, like, for instance, in some of the bullets, this is truly just style, so to speak. One may start off with a fragmented sentence, but the ones that follow are full sentences, things like that. And some of the tables that we have in here, when we have the tables in here, but they're not referenced, there's no reference for them, when you're reading through the document. You mentioned on one of the pages, it says something about, see the box on the next page as opposed to see figure number, just making certain that the labels and things are, so that the reader can follow them in a fluid manner. I think it's a good document. I think you did a really good job pulling all this together. And the picture of Collier, sorry, it looks kind of weird to me.
Picture of what?
That picture of you in here. It looks kind of like you've been running.
Your mugshot?
Your mugshot. Everybody else's picture looks fine. When I look at your picture, I get concerned.
So we just X through it?
And it's like your hair is kind of disheveled and. So.
Trump do?
What are you doing to me, Audra?
Look, I took the picture you gave me. Then I would withdraw the motion. Mamie at the writing lab, I called her about doing the final, and we had a meeting on Monday, I think it was Monday, where we got a lot of the review, and I sent it out a month for review to the whole board, so it's kind of been out there for a full month. But I would then withdraw the motion and ask for an approval of it, approval of the report pending making those corrections that Ms. Scott, she would either sit with Ed and myself or whomever, and we go ahead and make those. Because a lot of them was done in the meeting, and of course, we didn't get anything else. But if I can amend the motion to that, we can go ahead and approve it.
I've got a change I'm going to show you.
Yeah,
have
I
to do it
mean,
publicly, I
for
guess.
instance, in the
Okay.
first paragraph, in response to the CMPA's covenant with the community, a equal business opportunity should be an equal business opportunity program. I mean, just little things like that.
But, and that's the reason why we gave it a whole month. We had a meeting.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just looking at it, so I'm just providing the input.
So we'd love to sit down with you and make the changes and make sure it's perfect as we can get it, because that's what we want before we go and put it out in the community. So I'm totally okay with that. I just wanted to make sure that it was approved and with those corrections.
If you'd like, I'll take changes and corrections through close of business Friday, and we'll get them to Audra to correct over the weekend. If that's okay.
And call you if you wanted. We could take another picture of you, or we could Photoshop the back of your picture.
Renee sent you that, I can tell.
So,
You
final
want to change your
changes
picture?
by close of business Friday.
I had a question.
If I can get can I get the Word document so that I can just?
Right. One quick one, Audra. Were we able to get a readable copy of the covenant? I don't have my glasses, but I still can't read the copy that's in here.
That little, that's the same document. That's
sorry?
just the signed one.
Oh, it's down at the bottom. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the same
That's like
document.
a graphic. I actually think that's kind of cute.
Yeah, thank you. I missed that.
And I guess the only other question I would ask the board is, after we get the approval on Friday, how would you like to distribute it? And, can I get approval to use those dollars to make at least 500 copies that we can send to the local community and get back with them on the numbers?
How much money do you have left?
Ed, how much money do we have left?
Madam Chairwoman, I have not reviewed that particular ledger in quite some time. I thought we had expended everything, but I'll review that and report back to the board.
Yeah, and I have a bill for the young lady who finished it today. I'll give that to you as well.
Well, I would move that we authorize expenditure of not to exceed 500, assuming that that amount is in the budget.
And that was...
And if it isn't, we've expended all our contingency fund?
Yeah, and others contingency fund. This particular finished product was in the marketing program that Ms. Carter proposed at the very beginning. So I think the board's already acted on it. If there's balance there, she can spend it on printing.
Okay. And as far as suggestions of where to go, I would suggest that you circulate it to specifically, personally, to as many ministers, churches as you could.
I will.
They're always looking for sermon subjects.
One last thing.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Anything else?
Yeah, so we voted and it's approved? That we can do that? Do we have to have a motion and approve?
I'll call the question.
We have a motion on the floor.
We got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those
And
opposed?
then I have one teeny tiny thing.
Yes, ma'am.
As many of you know, that I'm actually in getting my doctorates in a DHA, and I'm actually going into an internship, which is going to take like a lot of hours. And in order for me to do well, I have to spend a lot of time. And I got calls from the city and also some council people asking me to remain on the board. But and it really was hard for me, because I love this board and I love you guys, and I know sometimes I'm hard, but I do try to be excellent. That is where my heart is. And so I want to wait till the end of the meeting and thank my chair for thinking enough of me and letting me help and support. And I think that it's probably best for me to go ahead and not take the reappointment and just say to you guys and to Pensacola, it was a labor of love. I love you, and that I'm here to support you whenever you like. And I would like to give somebody else the opportunity to serve as I have. And thank you for thinking enough to have me serve with you. It's been an honor.
Well, thank you very much. You're resigning?
Yes.
Well, you've done great work, and I appreciate that. There were some through some difficult times.
Yeah.
And I know you went through, put a lot of time. You always had the, try to put your best foot forward for all that. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1031 is the end, so I want to complete what I started. So I will complete it all the way through and give you guys a report and actually get out there and make it happen with the churches and give you a full report when I get done.
Very good. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, we've also been advised that Reverend May was not seeking reappointment as well. So
Very
City
good.
Council will be filling 2 vacancies.
Very good. Last on the business is the grand opening committee. I think y'all know it's November 17th. Kim is putting together a good program for us, a little bit of abbreviated from our original June 9th. Short of building the Ark that day, we certainly weren't going to have our opening.
I was there, Miss. I just want you to know that I was there June 9th.
I was there until I went home and got in the fetal position on my bed.
I can vouch for Ms. Scott. She was there, however, she did not get out of her vehicle.
Audra was there too.
Stop turning me around.
She rolled the window down about 2 inches and her car started flooding.
Oh, you're talking about
So she left quickly.
that day.
But we are scheduled for November 17th, Saturday. Things are coming together. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like the governor's going to be able to make it. We're in competition with his grandchild's first birthday party down in Naples.
I asked the chairman to invite the birthday party to.
Well, he did do that. We might move them up here from Naples. But we're going to have we have a good committee. I heard Ed mention Charlie Daniels, even though we're not supposed to mention the band who's playing or some other band. But I will say the newspaper said Charlie Daniels because they said it was on their website. We didn't confirm or deny that. The reason we can't name who the band is because it's a free event for us, obviously, November 17th. They're playing a paid gig a week before in Biloxi or somewhere around there, and they don't want that jeopardized. The day after that event, or as that event occurs, we can start advertising that band. We might be able to do sooner if that's a sellout, or as they do have it on their website. We're kind of looking, we're still narrowing the times down of having events start, and there's a big beer festival going on in the stadium. They're sharing that with us. We're still going to do some free hot dogs, a lot of the kids stuff. Probably looking around 4 o'clock doing the actual ribbon cutting with all of y'all. And we're trying to time it with the sunset. As the sunset will be somewhat over the water at that point, have a nice sunset, as we cut the ribbon, and then our band starts, and the conclusion of the band, we have fireworks. There we have it. Any questions on that? Any other business, old or new, to come before the board? We're adjourned. Thank you.